Hi everyone, Khyati here. I'm back with another video. This time I'm trying out CrafTangles blending brushes, and instead of doing a normal video where I make cards using these blending brushes, what I have decided is that I'll use these blending brushes on arrays of cardstock including brands like CrafTangles, Neenah and Lotus, which is fairly available in Indian market, and I'll also be using Tim Holtz distressing for blending. First cardstock that we are trying out today is CrafTangles dual textured cardstock. As the name suggests, it has two textures. One is the smooth side and the other is the rough side. I'll be first blending the smooth side and the second one will be the rough side. These cardstocks are specifically meant for blending inks. Hence you will be seeing that the inks are blended on these cardstocks like butter. All the cardstocks in today's video are cut to size 4/1/4 by 5.5 inches. For my first blending, which is the smooth side of dual textured cardstocks, the colors that I am using are Blueprint Sketch, Salty Ocean and Tumbled Glass Distressings. Moving on to the other side of the cardstock, which is the rough side of the dual textured cardstock. You can use either side for blending. Both works really well. It is a completely personal preference. Now while using these brushes, there is one thing that I realized, that if you hold it through your fingers along the handle of the brush, the amount of pressure that is exerted on the brushes is less, and hence you can build up the colors from light to the darkest. And if you use thumb on the head like how I'm doing right now, you can exert a huge amount of pressure, and that ways you'll be able to put darker shades in one go. So this is how the gradient effect looks. On the left is the rough side and on the right is the smooth side. And there are many ways in which you can color code your brushes. This is how I'm doing it today. So I've cut a strip of a regular printer paper and I'm using the distress ink of a blue shade for blue brush, and I'll just be cutting it and adding some sellotape on top of it and then sticking it to my brush. You can also punch, cut out and stick the same. It is a complete personal preference. So earlier I had these makeup blending brushes which I sourced locally. The only issue with these brushes were that the size was a set of various brushes ranging from an extremely large size to an extremely small size, because of which it was very difficult to estimate when I was blending. Like certain colors would have a big head and certain colors would have a small head, which is now an advantage with CrafTangles blending brushes, because these brushes come as a set of three and all of them are of same size. So you can color code and then use them for a particular color family, and you will know that the size of each of them is exactly the same. So moving on, here are how our blended backgrounds look for CrafTangles dual textured white cardstock. The next cardstock that we are trying out is CrafTangles Classic Smooth White. This is preferred for light watercoloring, and there's no mention of blending on these cardstocks, but let us try and see how it goes. Again, the size of the cardstock is 5.5 by 4 1/4 inches. I have decided to use pink colors for blending these, and the colors I have used are Picket Raspberry, Worn Lipstick, and Spun Sugar Distressings. So let us see how the blending goes. Right off the bat, when I start blending, you can see that it is comparatively a struggle to blend the inks on these cardstock as compared to dual textured white, and you can see there's some texture that is coming up on cardstock. However, once it was dry, it was comparatively smoother. I'll be having images added at the end of the videos of all the cardstocks and the blended samples I have done on the same, so you guys can see them in daylight and see how the blended backgrounds look. Definitely one thing to note here was that it took more time to blend these as compared to dual textured white, and however when dry the transition was really smooth and all that texture you see was gone. Again, I'm creating the strips on printed paper and using that to color code my brushes. So these are the samples of classic smooth white. The next paper that we move on to is the natural white cardstock by CrafTangles. This time I have used to decide the white distress inks on these cardstock. The colors I have used are wild honey, mustard seed, and squeezed lemonade. So let us see how the blending goes. I personally felt that blending on these cardstock was comparatively smoother than classic white, and the results were quite similar. As you can see, the first layer went pretty smooth, and the only issue where I could see that the background did not blend completely was from wild honey to mustard seed, hence I'll be adding some more ink and blending it even better. I have decided to create one more sample of the natural white cardstock, and over here I am using the pink colors again, which was Picket Raspberry, Worn Lipstick, and Spun Sugar Distressings. I have kept the colors fairly same across the cardstock so that you can see how the same inks behave on different cardstocks. So here are the samples that we created using natural white cardstocks, both in yellow and pink shades, using CrafTangles blending brushes. The next paper that we move on to is a local brand which is local to India called Lotus, and it is fairly available in most of the stationery shops in India. I'm using the Lotus handmade paper. This paper is comparatively thin, and I think it would be approximately 120 150 GSM. Again, I'm eyeballing the GSM, so don't hold me on it, but it is definitely thinner than your regular cardstock. However, the blending on these cardstock was really good, and since it's natural paper, you can see that there are some natural fibers that you can see peeking through the paper, and I felt that really added a good texture to the cardstock. And I think it would be good as a card base, but you can definitely not use it as your card base. It would be just for your card background. Moving on to the next paper, which is Lotus 210 GSM white paper. You can see the details on the screen right now. So this is comparatively a thicker cardstock, and I have started off with the shades of pink, which is Picket Raspberry, One Lipstick, and Spun Sugar. My spun sugar has almost dried out when I was doing this video, so I had to struggle really hard while blending that color. So you would see me with that struggle right now. Also, one more thing I noticed with that cardstock was that while blending, there were few spots that came on the cardstock when I was blending, and it was similar to how distress ink would react with water, only these were darker. So if you don't mind the spots, you can use the cardstocks. However, if you wanted a smooth blending, this is probably not a cardstock for you. Now, just to see if I get those spots when I used a different colored ink, I tried the same paper with the blue color family, which was Blueprint Sketch, Salty Ocean, and Tumbled Glass Distress ink. Over here, the spots were less, but they were there. So I think those spots are something which is specific to a cardstock. Again, it's a personal choice whether you would want to use it or not. However, the blending was definitely smooth on this cardstock as well, and it is definitely a good cardstock to blendings. Next up was the paper I think all the crafters, including me, was super excited about, and that was Neenah cardstock. Again, the link to all the products will be below, so all the details of which Neenah cardstock I have used, etc., will be linked below. So I had really high expectations with this cardstock when I started blending, and unfortunately this cardstock did not live up to the expectations. Maybe I did something wrong while blending it, or something went wrong. I'm not sure what exactly, but you can see that throughout this blending, while I was blending the color on the cardstock, it was a struggle, and there were a lot of spots that came onto the paper. Again, it comparatively smoothened out once it was dry. However, it's not one of my top paper when I would do ink blending. No hate comments, guys. I know many of you like Neenah cardstock and it's one of your go-to cardstock, but unfortunately it's not mine. So here are the three cardstocks that are kept side by side. So moving on to the next paper, which was Lotus Snow Cartridge paper, Snow White Cartridge paper. Again, it's comparatively thinner and similar to the thickness of the Handmade paper. And let us see how the blending goes on this. So I start off with the pink color on the sample, and this time I'm using lighter hand to blend, since now I'm more used to the blending brushes and I can control the amount of ink that I want to put on the paper. So I've decided to go a bit light on these papers and see how it goes. So this cardstock was also good in terms of ink blending. However, the only con which was very similar to the handmade one was that the paper is extremely thin and it cannot be used as a card base. However, you can layer it on a card base and use it as a card background. So here is a second sample I've created using the blue family. This cardstock was again, it was super quick to blend the colors and was not at all time consuming. And once it dried out, it smoothened out even more. So one thing I noticed was that for all the cardstocks, the colors smoothened out once they started drying. So none of those harsh lines which you see even on the cardstock like Neenah or Classic Smooth White existed once they were dry. Moving on to the next cardstock, which is Cartridge paper by CrafTangles. So this is a thinner paper, it's 150 GSM, and again not suitable for card base, but you can definitely use it as card background. So this paper was also very smooth when it came to blending, and you'll see that right now when I start blending the inks. So one thing that I wanted to tell you is that however harsh the lines were when blending, once it dried out, everything was smooth, be it any of the cardstocks that I have tested. So that you'll be able to see it when I post the images at the end of this video. But this is what I wanted to tell you. So, don't stress out on those lines that, there are harsh blending. Once they dried out, they all look pretty similar and pretty smooth for blending. So here I'm trying out second color, which is pink, on CrafTangles cartridge paper. So this part of the video over here wraps up all the white and the ivory cardstock that I have used for blending. So these include all the papers that I had in my stash. And next we'll move on to seeing the blending on some colored cardstocks, because I was really curious to see how they blend there. Before moving on to the colored cardstock, here are all my brushes color coded and ready to go. So the first paper that I am using is Liliac by CrafTangles. So this is a light and pretty shade of purple. The next up is Emerald Green, again by CrafTangles. Next up is Sky Blue cardstock by CrafTangles. And the last one is Rose Pink by CrafTangles. Apologies, my bad. This is Flamingo Pink by CrafTangles, and I'll be using Picked Raspberry and One Lipstick to shade the edges. Again, in colored cardstocks, what I noticed was that on video it comes off that there are very harsh lines between the cardstock and where I was blending. However, once they dried up, everything again was pretty smooth. So for blue, I am using, along with the sky blue color cardstock, I am using Salty Ocean ink by Tim Holtz Distress Ink. For the green cardstock, I'll be using Maud Lawn color of Tim Holtz Distressing. And the next one I have used shaded Liliac color with the Liliac paper. So I hope you enjoyed today's video and it was informative. Now I'll be sharing the images with you all of the cardstocks that we have created over the period of this video. And if you like my videos, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. I'd really appreciate you subscribing to my channel and would really be excited if you had anything for me, any questions, any queries, or any tips for me. Please do write it in the comment below and I would definitely get back to you. Thank you.